Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we have an economics video for you. So economics, CSEC economics, and today we are going to pick up from where we left off. So we are in section 4, market structure and market failure, and so we would have completed looking at the major market structures, and so we're moving on today to objective number 5, define the term market failure. So the definition of market failure, and we're going to also try and cover the causes of market failure, which are, the existence of a monopoly, merit goods, public goods, and a negative or positive externality. So we're looking at market failure and the causes of market failure today. So let's just jump right into it. What is market failure? Market failure is the inability of the market to allocate resources efficiently to best satisfy society's wants. Markets fail for a number of reasons. The causes of market failure lie in 4 areas: the provision of public goods, the provision of merit goods, externalities, positive and negative, and monopoly. And so we're going to look at all of them individually. So again, what is market failure? Market failure occurs when the market fails to allocate resources efficiently. When the market fails or breaks down, government can intervene to promote efficiency and equity. So all those things are what help to define market failure. So in essence, they're saying that when the market fails to produce a certain good efficiently, effectively, equally, that is when the market fails. So it's literal, the market fails. So in this case, there might be supply and demand out there, the market forces, but the market fails to allocate or to produce efficiently the resources that are being demanded by the consumers or supplied by the producers. So market failure again occurs when the market fails to allocate resources efficiently. That's a simple definition. And of course, we have some causes of market failure, such as externalities, the monopoly or the market power, merit goods, and of course public goods. And we're going to break them out separately so that we can see what each has to do with market failure. And so the first one we're looking at here would be the provision of public goods. There is a market for public goods, yet no private firms are willing to supply these goods. This is a case of missing market, a cause of market failure. So they are saying that public goods, the reality is most companies are out there to make a profit. And so for them to produce certain goods at a profit, to make a profit, then some poor people would suffer. And as such, the government has to step in and provide those goods. And those goods tend to be what we call public goods. Public goods, one cause of market failure might lie in the provision of public goods. Public goods are goods that are collectively consumed by society. They possess 2 characteristics: non-excludability and non-exhaustibility. So non-excludability means that a customer cannot be excluded from consuming the good, even if he or she did not pay for it. There is an absence of ownership rights attached to the purchase of these goods. Non-exhaustibility, non-diminishability, means that consumption of the good by one individual does not reduce the amount available for other individuals to consume. A public good can be consumed simultaneously by numerous individuals. Examples: public goods are street lights, lighthouses, and of course the police and defense and stuff like that. So that's a quick run of a public good. So the idea here is that there are certain goods that the government has to produce, because if left up to the market, they are not going to produce enough of it. For example, not education. So for example, street lights, parks, defense, those kind of things. The government has to step in and provide those goods. But those goods have 2 distinct characteristics, which are non-excludability and non-exhaustibility, meaning you cannot exclude anybody from using those goods once they are in the public. For example, there's a street light. You cannot say, okay, I'm going to pass by the street light, and when somebody else pass, I'm going to block out the light from them, so I'm the only one who enjoy the street light. It can't work like that. So you can't say, I'm going to keep you from enjoying the street light. So anytime you pass by, the street light go dim or goes out, and then when somebody else pass by, it comes on automatically. That can't work. right? So the street light is a good example of a public good. A park, a public park, you cannot say I'm going in the park and keep somebody else out, because it's not your park, it's the government providing it. So if everybody who's paying tax, they have the right to go and enjoy the park whenever they feel like. So you cannot exclude them from these kind of goods. So same way, defense, you cannot say that if you need defending from some ill, that somebody would say, okay, look, you don't have enough money to pay me, so I'm not going to defend you, I'm going to defend this other person. That is why private security and those things are so low, right? Because I don't have as much a reach as the police and the defense force and those kind of things, because you can't exclude persons from being defended. And so public goods are an example of how the market fail, because the market doesn't provide enough of it. If you look around, how many private schools are there compared to public schools, right? So again, we'll look at the merit goods later on, but we're just looking at the public goods right now. So let's delve a little deeper into public goods. So public goods. The best things in life are free. Free goods provide a special challenge for economic analysis. Most goods in our economy are allocated in markets. Supply and demand determines who wants what and who gets what. When goods are available for free of charge, the market forces that normally allocate resources in our economy are absent. So if it's free, then there's no job there for the law of for supply and demand. There's no job there for supply and demand when you have a free good. When a good does not have a price attached to it, private markets cannot ensure that the good is produced and consumed in the proper amount. So that's the whole key thing about market failure and public goods. Because most public goods are free, nobody wants to go into business to lose. Nobody go into business for charity unless you're a non-profit organization, right? So for the most part, the private sector would not produce that free good at enough of a level that would supply everybody in society, and as such the government has to step in, and that's how we get a public good, and as such we have market failure, right? So that's market failure in a nutshell. In such cases, the government policy can potentially remedy the market failure that results and raise economic well-being. When thinking about various goods in the economy, it is useful to group them according to two characteristics, as we said earlier. Is the good excludable? Is the good rival? Meaning, meaning you can exclude somebody from, whenever you use that good, it affects the consumption of the other person. So it diminishes the amount that the person can get from that good when somebody else using it. So in other words, we're talking about exhaustibility. Excludability refers to the property of a good whereby a person can be prevented from using it. Rivalry refers to the property of goods whereby one person diminishes other person's usage. So you might see some interchangeable words, rivalry, exhaustibility, diminishability, though all those things mean the same thing. They're saying that when one person uses that good, does it affect the consumption level of the other person who comes after? For example, again, the street light. If I go under a street light, the light can shine, let's say, at 1,000 watts for me. Will it show at, let's say, 500 2 watts for the other person? You know what I mean? So that's what they're talking about, rivalry. Can my consumption affect other person's consumption of that good, or diminishes other person's consumption of that good? And so if the good meets those criteria where it's non-excludability, it cannot exclude anybody, and it doesn't diminish based on use, then that good tends to be what you call a public good. A free rider. What's a free rider? A free rider is a person who receives the benefit of a good but avoids paying for it. And so we don't really like free riders, especially in what you call group work, where you have one person just there doing nothing and then the benefit from the results from everybody else. That's what we call a free rider in a group, and we don't really like that, right? So a free rider is a person who receives the benefit of a good but avoids paying for it. Since people cannot be excluded from enjoying the benefits of public goods, individuals may withhold paying for goods, hoping the others will pay for it. The free rider problem prevents private markets from supplying public goods, right? Solving the free rider problem, the government can decide to provide the public good if the total benefit exceeds the cost. So the total benefit of providing that good exceeds all the free riders and people not paying, then of course the government will pay for that. Another example would be like, unions. You're in a union, you're not a member, but if the union rallies for increasing wages, of course, you're going to benefit, right? So that's an example, right? You have a free rider. The government can make everyone better off by providing a public good and paying for it with tax revenue. Some important public goods: national defense, as we said before, basic research, fighting poverty. All those are examples of public goods. You have the example of the lighthouse right here, and so you cannot exclude anybody from the lighthouse, and somebody else using it would not diminish the effectiveness of the lighthouse. Right here in the textbook, you have a more in-depth example of the public good where they use the lighthouse as an example. So let's read and see what they say here. The idea is a demand for streetlights by most citizens. A private firm might wish to supply streetlights. However, because of the nature of the good, the firm cannot exclude the service of the streetlight from an individual who did not pay for the service. People who do not pay for good or service but enjoy its benefit are what we call, as we looked at before earlier, free riders. If streetlights are provided by a private firm, there will be many free riders. Streetlights are non-excludable. As I said before, you cannot tell somebody, don't come under the streetlight. So you cannot exclude people from using it. Whether they're paying for it or not, you cannot exclude them from using it. Also, economic theory states that the resources to be efficiently allocated, the price of the good must be equal to the marginal cost. And when the marginal cost is the cost of producing an extra unit. So P must equal to MC for the resource to efficiently be allocated. This means that the value society places on the last unit of the good produced, the price, must be equal to the value of the additional resources used to produce that good, its marginal cost. The cost of providing an additional house with streetlight services is the marginal cost of the firm. This cost is zero on a street where there are already streetlights, and a new house does not need an extra street light. So what they're saying here is that with the reference to the street light, they're saying if you go and put down your house in an area that already has street lights, there's no cost to you as it relates to the street light. You'll simply use the street light that's there. So if you are a street light vendor and you feel as though everybody should pay for street lights, every house that goes down you feel should have a street light attached. Well, that's not the case, because one street light can serve multiple persons. So if you put down the street light, you cannot say my neighbor can't use it or my neighbor can't use it, because the light would of course reach everybody. It's light in the dark, it's going to reach everybody, it's going to illuminate everything, and so you can't exclude anybody from doing that. And so therefore you're not going to get paid for the extra person putting on the house next to the light. You're not going to get paid for that. Maybe the first person, sure, but nobody after that you're going to get paid for. So in a sense, it's zero, right? Streetlights are non-diminishable in nature. For economic efficiency to exist, price must also be zero. No firm will supply a good at a price supply at zero. So that's the problem. That's the problem right there with the public good. No firm will supply a good at a price of zero, which is the implication of non-diminishability. And no firm will supply a good where no one can be made to pay for it. So if I know nobody's going to pay for it, but they're going to enjoy it, and it's not going to be zero cost to me as a firm, I'm not going to supply it. And so therefore we see where the market fail. You are not going to put down enough streetlights to cover everybody, knowing that you're not going to get the returns. You're not a charity, you're in for profit, and so therefore the market will fail to supply enough streetlights that can help everybody. And so when there is market failure as a result of the provision of public goods, there is an economic role for the government to play. The government intervenes and supplies public goods, and this is financed out of taxation. When the government supplies a public good, this market failure is eliminated. As the good is provided for consumers, government supplies the good, society collectively consumes the good, and it is paid for out of taxation. And so we get the gist there. We see how public goods can cause market failure, because their very existence means that the government had to intervene because the market itself would not supply enough or efficiently those types of goods. And so that is how public goods would cause market failure. Now then we have what we call merit goods. Merit goods. A second case of market failure is in the provision of merit goods. Merit goods are goods for which social benefits to the community of the consumption of the good far outweighs the private benefit to the consumer. Some examples of merit goods are education and health. And of course, we see it right there. Education, health. The cost to society for everyone to be educated is far greater. It is far greater. The benefit outweighs that of private consumers. So what they're saying here is that it is better for everyone to be educated than just a few. It is better for everyone to have access to healthcare, decent healthcare, than just a few. Because if you have a lot of, let's say, uneducated persons running around in society, what kind of society is that? So you might have your master's, your PhD, whatever, you alone, but everybody else around is uneducated. There's no benefit to society with you alone being the only one educated. But the reality is this: just like public goods, not many firms are going to be willing to provide enough of merit goods to supply the entire market. Can't happen, won't happen. They're in it for profit. And that is why you tend to see there are more public schools than there are private schools. Because if we had all private schools, some persons, majority of society, might not be able to afford it. And so the benefit would not be gained by society with just a few being educated, or just a few people being healthy. Imagine your entire workforce is unhealthy as a country, as a society. That cannot work because there's no productivity going on. So there's no production, there's nothing being happening. So society on a whole would not benefit if just a few healthy persons exist. And so that is why a merit good would cause market failure. And then same way, the government has to intervene in order to correct the market failure and provide hospitals and health centers and public hospitals, public health centers, public schools, those kind of merit goods. So that is how merit good comes into play as it relates to market failure. Then we have the third cause of market failure, externalities. What are externalities? Externalities are the spillover effects of production or consumption that falls on a third party. So externality are a spillover effect of production or consumption that falls on a third party, meaning you're not a party to whatever production or consumption was going on, but it still affects you. And of course, one of the best examples of a negative one would be, secondhand smoking or pollution. And of course, positive ones include things like immunization and planting of a nice, beautiful garden, stuff like that. Right? So let's look further as to what externality and how it applies to market failure. So another way of defining externalities would be: an externality refers to the uncompensated impact of one person's action on the well-being of a bystander or third party. Externalities cause markets to be inefficient and thus fails to maximize total surplus. So you can see that. You can see if there's a spillover, clearly the market failed to efficiently allocate that resource because there's a spillover. If there was no spillover effect, then it would be contained within within all the parties involved, and so that would be efficient. But it's inefficient because there is a spillover effect to bystanders. In some cases it's positive, in some cases it's negative. But either way, there's a spillover effect, and that means that the market is not being efficient, and so we have market failure. An externality arises when a person engages in an activity that influences the well-being of a bystander and yet neither pays nor receives any compensation for that effect. When the impact on the bystander is adverse, the externality is called a negative externality. When the impact on the bystander is beneficial, the externality is called a positive externality. Some examples of negative externalities include automobile exhaust, cigarette smoking, secondhand smoking, barking dogs, that's a little noise pollution, loud stereos in an apartment building, again noise pollution. Then you have some positive externalities, includes immunization, restored historic buildings, everybody can enjoy the view, research into new technologies. All those are examples of positive externalities. Negative externalities lead markets to produce larger quantities than socially desirable. Positive externalities lead markets to produce larger quantities than is socially desirable. So you realize both ends is the same, and the same meaning that the market is producing more than it is really needed, and so there's a spillover effect, and as such you have inefficiency in the market and you have market failure. So the market is failing to be efficient in both cases of negative and positive externalities, but some are desirable, some are not desirable, right? So that is how externalities lead to market failure. When there are negative and positive externalities, the market fails. So both cases, as I said before, means the market would have failed. In economics, we assume that the government will do what it can to promote the welfare of citizens. The government will try to intervene and reduce the market failure. The government might tax firms that produce negative externalities so that the firm reduces production. It might even place a direct control limiting the quantity produced by the offending firm. When production is reduced by negative externalities, pollution will also be reduced. The government might even use the revenue collected from the tax to clean up the pollution. And so you can see how government might try to reel in some of these negative externalities by taxing persons, carbon taxes, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the market still fails because they produced too much. There's a spillover effect, and it affected the third party or the bystander. So in tabular form, you can see different examples of externalities happening right here. So we see the diagram depicting four cases here. We have positive, you have negative externalities, you have it right here. So the man up here blasting his music, my boy down here trying to sleep, and so you disturbing the man afternoon nap. So the noise, the spillover effect, would affect this man when this one up here enjoying anything. He ain't got nothing to do with it, but he up here blasting the music and there are problems here, the man trying to sleep. The emissions of a nearby factory affecting breathing and causing dust on the walls and furniture. As you can see, if anybody live in an industrial area, you can see that, factories blasting, the noise, the horn. They also have dust and soot and those things affecting your furniture, affecting your house. Negative externality. But positive here we have now, your neighbor enjoys looking at a neighbor's garden. So your neighbor got a nice, beautiful garden, flowers and bees and birds, but your neighbor, you're over on the wall just admiring, you're enjoying it. So all that the neighbor did for himself, it spilled over because can see that garden looking so nice and lovely. Water from a nearby factory warming the river for bathers. That's a little suspect for me. I wouldn't really bathe in water that was warmed by a factory, if you know what I'm saying, right? We don't know what radiation might be in there, so don't really like the example the book used here with that one. But anyway, positive. So, and of course, a good example would be, of course, immunization. Everybody take the vaccines. COVID coming up. COVID vaccines are being prepared. So if everybody take the COVID vaccine, all of us can now go out and enjoy ourselves once again. Little linemen, little dancing, little clubbing, everything, sports, everything back to normal. So immunization is another form of positive externalities. So let that one start happening sooner rather than later. Alright, let that happen now. Of course, another cause of market failure is the existence of monopolies. Of course, we looked at the monopoly earlier. We looked at it earlier in the chapter and in a previous video, and so you can see how monopolies can cause market failure. Market also fail when there are monopolies. Monopoly meaning only one producer of a certain good, and that one producer can dictate the price. That one producer, there are no substitutes, so you have nowhere else to go. The one producer charge the price higher than marginal cost, and so we have market failure. It's not allocated efficiently. The monopolist is not allocating the stuff efficiently. They're allocating it in a way that will benefit them the most. They're going to maximize their profit. So markets also fail when there are monopolies. As mentioned earlier in this chapter, a firm is allocatively efficient when the price of a product is equal to the marginal cost. So P equal MC. Marginal cost is the value of the last unit produced based on producer cost. But as we looked at the monopoly before, that does not exist. The price is normally a bit higher than where marginal cost and price equal. The price is the value that the society places on the last unit produced. The value that the producer places on the last unit marginal cost ought to be the same as the value society places on the unit. When this is true, then there will be allocative efficiency and no market failure. However, the monopolist sells at a price that is greater than marginal cost. And we saw that earlier when you look at the monopoly by itself. Price is greater than marginal cost. Too little of the good is produced and it is sold at too high a price. In the monopoly market, there is therefore market failure. The government might intervene in the monopoly market to reduce market failure by passing laws, encouraging firms to enter industries where there are monopolies, and taking over industries where monopolies cannot be avoided, for example, water, electricity, and thereby regulating prices, water, and electricity rates. So all those that's market failure in a nutshell and the causes of market failure. Again, they have a nice table here showing a little roundup, a little summary of the causes of market failure. Public goods, missing market at zero price, meaning the good is at zero price, nobody wants to produce at zero price, so therefore the government has to. Merit goods, underproduction, too little. The market produces too little of that good, like education, defense, that kind of stuff, and so the government has to intervene and provide the rest. Negative externalities, overproduction, too much. Positive externalities, underproduction can happen. Then we have the monopoly on the production as the price is greater than marginal cost. And so we see here that all these causes and effects of market failure. So we're going to study it for now. We don't want to make this video far too long. So we're going to study it for now. And in the next video, we are going to look at some of the consequences of market failure. So we defined the term market failure. We outlined the main causes of market failure. And in the next video, we are going to discuss the main consequences of market failure. So you know what to do in order to know when this video drops. You know what to do. You have to like this video. Then you have to subscribe. Okay, subscribe first. All right, let me give you the steps. Subscribe, like the video, hit the notification bell so you know when the next part is dropped, and of course, share the video, share the content with friends, families, well-wishers, right? So make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you know when Learn SKN drops part 2 of market failure. All right, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.